many of us in Michigan, in the key swing state of Michigan, were feeling very hopeless and helpless and frustrated and grieving as we were watching a genocide unfold on our phone screens and on our TV screens, and hearing, I'm Palestinian American, so I felt like I was watching my brothers and sisters and my family members be killed with American-funded bombs, my own tax dollars, of people that looked like my family members, who shared names of my family members, of my own children, using my tax dollars. And particularly in Michigan, it was intentional that this movement began there, as we have the largest concentration of Arab Americans and Muslim Americans in the country who know the first-hand impact of our U.S. policy decisions and U.S.-funded bombings. Not only that, we are a key swing state in the race to the White House, and we have traditionally, within the Arab American and Muslim American community, have flexed our political power through the Democratic Party. So we were questioning, in this moment of feeling hopelessness and helplessness, what can we do? We were watching as media was turning away from covering what was happening in Gaza and covering the elections. So how could we continue getting coverage for what was happening in Gaza while also pushing for a much needed policy change? And that is when we use the vehicle of Uncommitted on our presidential Democratic ballots, a tactic that actually Obama used in 2008 when he was not on the Michigan Democratic ballot, and used the vehicle of Uncommitted to embarrass the Hillary Clinton campaign at that time. And it worked. And so we said, if we could vote Uncommitted and get a margin of 10,000 votes, which was what Trump had won in Michigan in 2016 in that primary, that we could show that Democrats were going to be in trouble in November, that President Biden was going to be in trouble in his campaign, his re-election campaign for the presidency in November, because you need Michigan to win. Your pathway to the White House runs through Michigan. Now we are at over almost 800,000 uncommitted votes nationwide. And we have 30 delegates right now at the Democratic National Convention. And we are continuing to use the political leverage that we've earned through our presidential primaries to push the Democratic Party to adopt a policy that speaks to the majority of Democratic voters who are saying that they want an immediate and permanent ceasefire now and conditions to weapons funding. And the only way that Netanyahu will be incentivized to actually uphold a ceasefire deal is if we stop this flow of weapons that has emboldened him to drop thousands of bombs on men, women, and children, civilians in Gaza, violating our own American law and international law.
Thank you. And I know where we're from, Michigan, there were 4 cities that had demonstrations this past weekend before the DNC, and it also reached to 35 states and 90 cities. I was wondering if you could tell our readers and viewers about the Not Another Bomb campaign and what's next for that.
The Not Another Bomb campaign is an effort to really push this movement across the country and reflect the majority of American voters who don't want to see their tax dollars being used. This blank check sent to Netanyahu and his far-right government as they're carrying out a genocide. It is really to pressure not only our electeds, but build on the social movement that already started with the ceasefire movement, that in order for us to have a ceasefire, we need to stop the bombing and killing of Palestinians, and we need to stop our tax dollars being used and being complicit in the bombing of those men, women, and children. And what we are saying now, and the majority of Americans, and those that are all participating in this movement, in this campaign, is not another bomb.
You spoke earlier today on the panel about getting ceasefire delegates and how it's some of the easiest organizing you can do at this right now. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Our uncommitted delegates are, in the spaces with other Harris delegates. They are on the floor of the Democratic National Convention, using their voices, using their stories of uncommitted and how they became an uncommitted delegate, and representing the voices of that almost 800,000 voters across the country. And the reason why our delegates are telling us that's some of the easiest organizing that they had to do, because truly this movement reflects the majority of Democratic voters. 86% of the Biden-Harris voter base support a permanent and immediate ceasefire. And we know that how else will we stop the bombing of Palestinians if our current policy does not support that? So we need to push on a policy shift. And we know that in order for Vice President Harris to have that fighting chance in November, not just to win her election, but to fight against fascism and authoritarianism, we need to stop the funding to a fascist and authoritarian government and the war criminal Netanyahu. And so our delegates are coming back and saying the majority of Harris delegates actually support our movement, which isn't surprising since the majority of Democrats feel the same way. I think that we are what I've seen is Vice President Harris be a little bit more open to speaking to us on the Uncommitted National Movement side. I've seen her be a little bit more sympathetic and empathetic and compassionate towards the plight of Palestinians, but of course we know that's not enough. And it's always the Democratic Party that is first to say, especially when there is violence and mass shootings, that thoughts and prayers are not enough. We need policy change. And in this situation, it is no different. It is no different. We don't need, the compassion is welcomed and the thoughts and prayers are nice, but that's not going to stop the bombings. And just as humanitarian aid workers and doctors on the ground in Gaza who have bared witness to the human impact of our U.S. policy decisions have said, Palestinian children can't eat words. And right now, not because it's the immoral thing to do, but because it really, this policy right now does not align with the stated values of our Democratic Party and violates our own laws. So right now we need Vice President Harris to shift. And what I can say that is working, we see these last 10 months, almost a year, we've seen an incredible shift in public opinion when it comes to Palestinian and Palestinian liberation. And it does feel like for the first time that the majority of Americans and the majority of Democrats are on the side of Palestinian liberation, or at least do not want to see our tax dollars being used to uphold apartheid, to uphold genocide and ethnic cleansing. And I think that we are in the step of right direction, and we're going to keep pushing, and the people on the street need to keep pushing, and the many tactics that is being used right now to grow our movement need to keep pushing, not just through the DNC, not just through November, but for years to come in order for us to see a liberated Palestine.